Welcome to Blog Talk Radio in high fidelity.
This is why I'm in here. Go in there.
Join us.
Oh my God,
Utopian Realities. Slow. Save life on planet Earth. Blog Talk Radio Show. Bringing you solution bearers with practical, proven, scientific ways to help you eliminate global level irradiation and extinction level threats from your body, and bringing forward the means to restore and sustain global waters, air, soil, and sentient life. Welcome.
Welcome. Don't cruise nowhere, just park somewhere or something.
Greetings. This is Seava, also known as Lisa Wolf, your host. Welcome to the Utopian Realities. From concept to planetary restoration, slope. Save and sustain life on planet Earth. Earth Aid Now. Saturday Solution Bearers Forum, where we bring you solution bearers who can help us to mend the sacred hoop of life. As always, listeners, follow the link to listen to the program and to join the live chat page, and phone 845-277-9359 with questions and comments. Thank you for joining us as Earth Aid Now Radio's weekly Standing with Standing Rock, Savage Sovereignty, and Water Protectors Council meets with Rica Rouse and Eagle Eye Man, and hopefully Chief Phil Lane Jr. will be joining us. And our guests will be speaking about surviving Indian boarding schools. And later in the program, we'll hear part of an interview I did a few days ago with Professor Victor Douville, speaking on reestablishing traditional government. Chief Phil Lane Jr. and Rica Rouse and their relatives endured the Indian boarding school system and have been part of the struggle to right the wrongs. Rica graduated from St. Paul Indian Mission in 1976 and lives in Marty, South Dakota. She will be speaking about surviving the St. Paul Indian Mission and what it means now. And because Chief Phil isn't with us yet, and we open these programs with prayer, we're going to begin by listening to a Thanksgiving address. And
Agwega Oscar and did the walkway nooney, ne ungwa negorda, da no daitino horado, ne ungwe sua, daitino horado, ne yati ni staha avunda, daitino horado ne garanyo, daitino horado ne gancho sua, daitino horado ne ohande sua. Daitin horado ne onukwa suma. Daitin horado ne ohdera suma. Daitin horado ne junhekwa. Daitin horado ne gahik suma. Daitin horado ne ojitnoa suma. Daitin horado ne gandirio. Daitin horado Negarunda Ogunga. Daitina Horada ne Ojita Ogunga. Daitina Horada ne Yeti Sotomo Radiweras. Daitina Horada ne Gayiri Nigawarage. Danchidawano Horada ne Sungwa Jia Anjaneka Garakwa. Daitina Horada ne Yeti Sota Asumtaneka Garakwa. Daitina Horada ne Yoji Stoch Boranyo. Daitina Horada ne Gayiri Niongwedige. Danchidawano Horada ne Sungwa Dizo. Onanua, Ohadogari Wadeko, Negano for the Dotsra, what the Baba no had stay. Togatotena Sunget Negorha, Awado Easy, Jizawaya Dotso, Icewag Wadago. Etony Dohak Neagwat Negora. Etony Gawanage, da Ona Eto.
Thank you. Welcome, Rica. Welcome, Eagle.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. As we explore in these programs the path to sovereignty for the Oceti Sakowin and for all tribal people globally, we look at various aspects of what was done to destroy sovereignty. And so our topic today is Indian boarding schools, residential schools. And to put it in perspective, I'm going to read a little information for those who aren't familiar with the boarding schools, and this is from Wikipedia. American boarding schools were established in the United States during the late 19th and early 20th centuries to educate Native American children and youths according to Euro-American standards. These boarding schools were first established by Christian missionaries of various denominations who often started schools on reservations and founded boarding schools to provide opportunities for children who did not have schools nearby, especially in the lightly populated areas of the West. The government paid religious societies to provide education to Native American children on reservations. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Bureau of Indian Affairs founded additional boarding schools based on the assimilation model of the Carlisle Indian Industrial School. Children were usually immersed in European American culture through appearance changes, with haircuts, were forbidden to speak their native languages, and traditional names were replaced by new European American names to both civilize and Christianize. The experience of the schools was often harsh, especially for the younger children who were separated from their families. In numerous ways, they were encouraged or forced to abandon their Native American identities and cultures. Investigations of the later 20th century have revealed many documented cases of sexual, manual, physical, and mental abuse occurring at such schools. And that's a very innocuous description of the history of boarding schools. And now I welcome Rica and Eagle. And perhaps, Eagle, you can begin by explaining what the deeper purpose of these schools were within an understanding of sovereignty, why it was so important to do this to the children.
Well, it was to break the clan system because there was strength with the families together as clans. But I would like to hear from Rica and the people that experienced it and the effects first, just to listen in to what they have to say.
Well, absolutely. Rica, where shall we begin?
Okay, I want to start by saying that the early 60s, when the school, St. Paul's Indian Mission, was built down here, it was solely a Catholic boarding school with their churches, their buildings, everything that they taught. Everything they taught was, St. Paul's Indian Mission was such a great and fine school. Nobody in the state of South Dakota could beat it. Nothing. the track was good, everything, academics, everything that goes into education system here at St. Paul's Indian Mission was the best. So these children that have graduated from here, some of them are really smart and intelligent. They have degrees. They're so cool. They're so fine. But there's those of us that were, I don't know, I want to say caught in the system as far as physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. And so we were forgotten. All these years we were forgotten. And something had come up. One of my relatives said, well, I want you to meet these attorneys because they want to talk about your experience in St. Paul's Indian Mission. So I went blank. I couldn't remember nothing. I mean, for days, for months, I couldn't remember anything. And then after talking to those attorneys one night, my friend, his name is Gary Fisher, he's a legal consultant from Los Angeles, and they formed this group. And so we got together and we started going around because the majority of the students that went to St. Paul's Indian Mission were kind of local, but they also there were 5 different states that these Indian children were bussed in or driven in by their parents. Either way, they got there, they were there. And a lot of us were just babies. I mean, 6 years old, 7 years old. I mean, we were just babies, ripped from our parents' arms almost, just to drop us off there, you know? Not knowing what to expect. None of that. It's beyond me why that school was even there. But anyway, we all went there. With the federal government, it took an active role in a part as far as having the children taken away. And, you know, in that it took away our, like I said, our psychological, our spiritual, and our physical. That's what they took from us. They erupted our homes, our lives with our parents. A lot of them had to go, and a lot of them had to stay there the whole year because their parents couldn't come here because they couldn't afford it. And so a lot of times some of the children stayed here all year round. And so those that had to stay here majority of the year round, those were the ones that were abused. I was lucky. My mother and father, they would come after me on the weekends, and so I would go home. But the weekday, we stayed there. So whatever went down, sometimes I would stay there. It wasn't every weekend I got to go home either. So in those times, it was lonely. And even though we were forced to go to church, all this, and believe in their way, we didn't feel right. It wasn't right for us, but it was forced on us, so we had to deal with it. But it's scary. It's really scary because I would really like to get a hold of some of the people that went to school, graduated from here, and see how they're doing. And they're probably doing good. Because like I said, Marty St. Paul's Indian Mission, they turned out some really intelligent men and women. They're super. I know a lot of them. And I also know a lot of the ones that were abused. So there was kind of like this thing. They were saying, well, how can that didn't happen because these people are good. These priests and nuns, they're good people. That didn't happen, or didn't happen to them. But those of us that it happened to, we have a story to tell. And I know now, being a grandparent, that it's really hard to say it because you don't want your grandchildren to know it. You don't want your family to know it, what you've been through. I mean, in my case, it was quiet all these years. And it just came out back in 2004. It was in a newspaper about someone out east, how they had been abused at a Catholic boarding school. And so we picked up our after that, it was like, wow, someone's really saying something about what happened to them with the Catholic boarding schools. And so we got together, and it just took off. It was great. It was fun for me because I met a lot of these people. And then it was hard because, like I said, they're grandparents now. And it's hard for them to say things like that in front of their families. And even now today, a lot of them that were involved in our lawsuit, they don't want to say nothing anymore. I mean, it's kind of like they're done, you know. But I'm finding out now that in my case, we have an attorney, and his name is Gregory Yates, out of Rapid City, and California, and they're still working on a case to find a loophole in a bill, House Bill 207, that the legislatures had put a stop to our lawsuit right then and there, right in front of us. We couldn't say anything. I elbowed my attorney. I was like, get up and say something. He's like, I can't say nothing. He said, oh, I was so upset because the legislatures, there's 7 of them, and they all spoke on behalf of, one got up and said, why? I'm offended. I'm a Catholic church. Why didn't they accuse the Presbyterians or the Lutherans? I'm like, well, you know what? If that's the case, there's probably people out there, because those Catholic, or not the Catholics, but the Lutherans, the Presbyterians, they all came to different Indian families around here, and they probably did the same thing they did to us, but those people aren't going to say anything. So I'm like, wow, it's so crazy how they're not going to say nothing after all these years, when now it's out there and we have that chance to say it. I think we all should be outraged, myself, but it ain't that way.
I'd like to put it into perspective from a book by Meredith Quinn called The Great Matriarch. And this is begins on page 30 and 31. He's talking about Harold L. Ickes and the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934. And I'll read this section to let listeners know the horrors that were documented. It was in the late 1930s, before 1939, that 11 and 12-year-olds held a physical confrontation with school officials. And when Harold Ickes arrived, he was surprised to learn that these small children did not care if the Justice Department opened fire on them with weapons. Mr. Ickes met with leaders of these small children that included the grandson, Meredith Quinn, and was even more surprised to learn that if the Justice Department did not kill them, school officials would. Mr. Ickes asked for the reasons how this would come about, and this is what he heard. One had to learn to speak the English language in 30 days or receive a beating that often killed you. 2, one could not pray to the Creator, Great Spirit, and World Maker, and if caught, one received the same kind of beating. 3, the children did not like to stand at attention while a friend was being beaten, many times already dead, but the school official kept on beating the friend because his body kept jerking. 4, school officials were finding too many reasons to beat a student, and it was decided by the small children that everybody was going to die, so to die fighting was better than a beating. Harold Ickes, as the Secretary of the Interior, made the following deals with these children. 1, there would never be another beating in any school as long as the student lived or his children. 2, that these school officials would be removed, but the students were not to tell anyone the names of these school officials who beat their friends to death. It was after the children understood the conditions did they lay down their weapons. These were 11 and 12-year-olds who came to die. The grandson remembers this day well as he sat on the lap of Harold Ickes, looking at his big hands that had red hair and freckles. Mr. Ickes asked the grandson what other things could be done to make this school better. The grandson was too scared to answer.
Excuse me if I cry. Excuse me if I cry because it's so true. I mean, things like that happen. And when you tell somebody they don't believe it, even if a child tells their parent that their boyfriend or even their dad had raped them or did something to them, a lot of times adults don't believe that kind of wording, It's hard for them to believe it. And in my case, it's like, well, they're Catholic priests and nuns. They don't do that. They're good people. They're good people. But they're not. I mean, in that case, that Mr. X, I mean, that's just one of many, one of many people who were abusers.
Yes, yes. Well, and she still sent a letter. This is part of his keynote address on healing the intergenerational impact of sexual abuse at the first International Indigenous Sexual Abuse Conference, February 13th, 2003, in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And if you guys don't mind, Rica and Eagle, I'll read some of this, not all of it.
Okay.
My very beloved relatives, with a grateful heart, I want to extend a warm, respectful, and loving greeting to each of you who have gathered here from the four directions to further unite, deepen, expand, and empower the healing and transformation process of our Indigenous peoples and communities. It is a great honor and inspiration to be with you as we fulfill the sacred prophecies of the wise visionaries and spiritual leaders of all our tribes and nations. These ancient prophecies promised that after a very long, difficult, and painful winter time, our Indigenous peoples would fully arise from the ashes of our suffering and play a great role in the spiritual transformation of the entire human family. Some years ago, a beloved tribal grandmother asked me a deep and soul-searching question. Grandson, she asked me, what is the most sacred, the most powerful, the most holy of all ceremonies? With some pride, I began to recount some of the traditional tribal ceremonies that I had participated in over the years. After I was finished describing the sun dance, the sweat lodge, vision questing, and other ceremonies I had participated in, she said, Grandson, those are all very sacred, powerful, and holy ceremonies, but the most sacred, the most powerful, the most holy of all ceremonies is the birth of a child. Then she looked very, very deeply into my eyes and soul and said, then who are you? This beloved grandmother strongly reminded me that this very holy and intimate ceremony and creative power that ignites human life is equally sacred and must be respected at all times. My relatives, it is very clear from the widespread sexual abuse, including the increasing sexual abuse of children, incest, pornography, rape, child and adult prostitution, HIV, AIDS, and gang rape found within our communities, that when this creative power and sacred expression of life is abused in any manner, the very foundation of ourselves and our communities is damaged and destroyed, sometimes for generations. Through this heartbreaking abuse, our trust, faith, and belief in ourselves, our loved ones, our communities, and life itself is broken. Our innermost purity, innocence, and unconditional love is brutally and shamefully betrayed and violated. We become our own abusers and the abusers of others. We become isolated and alone. We are filled with fear and shame. We no longer care if we live or die. Some of us even chose suicide rather than live any longer in the intense and overwhelming pain and suffering that seems to have no end. This is what has happened to many of us gathered here today, our loved ones and countless others who feel hopeless, alone, and in deep pain and suffering throughout our sacred lands.
True.
And the reason we're bringing this up in a conversation on residential boarding schools is because this was the site of the commencement of this abuse. And, excuse me, And then he says, both my parents attended residential schools. As a result of their abusive experiences in residential schools and the world they grew up in, I also experienced physical and emotional abuse growing up as a child. By the time I was 12, I had become so physically and emotionally tough that when I cut the meaty part of my hand almost to the bone with an axe, I felt no pain. I was so proud of myself for being able to go beyond the pain that I walked up to my father and said with a big smile, I cut myself. When the doctors sewed me up, I refused to take anything for pain so I could show my father how tough I had become. Because of their own experiences and teachings growing up, my parents never discussed anything sexual with me or my sister. When I asked my parents where a baby came from, it took months for them to give me some sort of vague answer. At 12, with no real understanding of sexuality, an older boy from the European tribes, who I deeply trusted and admired, got me drunk for the first time and sexually abused me. Afterwards, I became so angry, drunk, and sick that I tore up the basement he abused me in, vomited everywhere, and eventually passed out. I realize now that, in a way, this was my first act of protesting and showing resistance against sexual abuse. The next day, the older boy, who I loved and admired so very much, completely rejected me. This experience of sexual abuse at the beginning of my life as a young man hurt me very, very deeply. As I understood more and more the reality of what had happened to me, combined with intergenerational trauma and the impact of the sick, racist, materialistic world that surrounds us, my shame, fear, self-hatred, rage, and anger grew stronger and stronger. As a young man, I abused myself with alcohol and drugs. I would strike out with violence if I felt the slightest disrespect. One time, I beat up a 6'5" U.S. Marine who had just returned from the Vietnam War so badly that they had to remove his eye. Since everyone present witnessed that he started the fight, I was exonerated of any responsibility for the result of my actions. I had abusive and unhealthy relationships with women. Sometimes I didn't care if I lived or died because I felt so ashamed, fearful, unworthy, and untrusting. I was unable to have trusting, honest, warm, and loving relationship with others. I couldn't talk to anyone about any of my feelings. The only thing that saved me from a painful, premature death was the spiritual and cultural teachings, prophecies, and stories of the greatness of our indigenous peoples that were shared with me by my beloved parents, elders, extended family, and loved ones, as well as learning about the spiritual teachings and prophecies of the great spiritual teachers who have always guided the human family. Although our family was impacted by intergenerational trauma in some parts of our life, I was very, very fortunate never to hear my father raise his voice to my mother, hit her, or even swear in her presence. I also have always known deep in my heart that my parents have always loved my sister and I more than life itself. I'll go on, if you don't mind. Through these spiritual influences in 1968, in the darkest heart of my suffering, I had a spiritual experience that inspired and empowered me to free myself from my self-destructive addictions and to do all I could to serve the people and the Creator. During this time of spiritual renewal, I met a beautiful and deeply spiritual woman who I believed I would be with forever. We had a beautiful wedding, and for 2 years our life together was filled with great spiritual love, unity, growth, and beauty. In our mutual desire to be of service to Indigenous people and the human family, we left our jobs, our home, and all our possessions and traveled to Bolivia. We found Bolivia to be a sacred land filled with millions of Indigenous relatives of great spiritual strength, understanding, and wisdom. In a way, it was like going back in history when our own Indigenous peoples of North America retained our spiritual purity, innocence, and unified strength. I never wanted to leave, but Creator had another plan. Every morning I would pray and meditate for an hour. Understanding that forgiveness was a primary key to my healing, I began to pray fervently to the Creator to learn to be forgiving. After 2 months of praying with all my heart to learn to be forgiving, my beloved wife was brutally raped by the drunken son of a wealthy Bolivian family known for their longtime brutality and abuse of indigenous peoples. Even though I confronted him shortly after the rape and he was arrested, because of the wealth and power of his family and the corrupt justice system, he was eventually set free. It was through this experience I realized that along with our own hurt, pain, and rage, we also carry the hurt, pain, and rage of our ancestors. For when this happened, it seemed like the unresolved hurt, pain, and rage of 1,000 generations came boiling up inside me. My faith in the Creator was shattered. I spoke to the Creator with great anger and bitterness. I tried with all my heart to serve the people and fulfill your sacred teachings. How could you allow my beloved wife to be brutally raped? What did she do to deserve this brutal attack on her sacredness as a woman and a human being? In the end, her relationship was destroyed by this brutal act of rape and all the pain and hurt that comes with such an experience. To all my relatives here today that have also suffered from rape and other abuse, I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that I stand with you and will support you in all your efforts for justice and healing. Together, through our unified prayers and the power and strength of our Creator, we will live to see the day, either in this world or the world to come, when rape and other forms of abuse will be completely eliminated from our sacred lands forever. It was through this very painful and heartbreaking experience of rape and other abuse I have faced in my life that the Creator taught me some very important spiritual principles. Be careful what you pray for. The Creator will always answer your prayers. Sometimes the answer will come in ways we don't expect, but the Creator will never give us a test we can't pass as long as we keep praying and remain faithful. The only one who can teach the person with the whip what true love and forgiveness are about is the person being whipped. When we ask the Creator for strength, we will receive tests and difficulties to make us strong. When we ask for wisdom, the Creator will give us many problems to solve. When we ask for great courage, the Creator will give us heroic obstacles to overcome. If it were not for tests, how would the courageous be distinguished from the cowardly? Without tests, how would the precious diamond be distinguished from the worthless pebble? For we cannot not be a good leader of warriors unless we have been in front of the fiercest battles and received the deepest wounds. Our wise spiritual leaders have always taught us, do you think you can say you believe in the Creator and will not be tested? For when the cry of truth is raised, so is the cry of denial.
You know, that's a really sad story. I don't know how somebody can overcome all of that. But those of us, I myself, when I was abused here at this Catholic boarding school, all those years I just put it in the back of my mind. I never dealt with it, and I was wondering, why am I a drunk? Why am I a drug addict? Why am I doing all this? Why am I in and out of jail? Why don't I love my children? What am I doing? What did I do? And then in 2004, when this, whatever it was that struck me, after they asked about the abuse or however it was at St. Paul's Indian Mission, it was like the next night, like something came out of me. It was really weird. It was like, I was laying down and I could feel like a vibration. And first it was in my feet, and then it got to my body, and then it got to my head, and it was like, It was really weird, and all of a sudden it was just like gone. and I sat up, and it was like, wow. For some reason, I had felt really good because that same night, after all these years of not talking about what happened to me, I wrote it down on a piece of paper. Now, I didn't tell anybody all those years. I didn't even tell those attorneys until I wrote it down on that paper what had happened to me. And when I did that same night, man, it was a relief. I never realized ever in my whole life until then why I drank, why I didn't love my children, why I was doing this, why I was doing all the bad things. And I never ever thought about suicide once, though, not ever. I just always wondered why I didn't love my children and why I was doing what I was doing. When I found out, it was like, I don't know, it just made me feel good that whatever it was gone. And now I'm a better mother, and I'm a wonderful grandmother. My grandchildren love me. I'm the best for them. And I want it that way. I want it to stay that way, you know? And the people that went through the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, the emotional abuse, it's really hard. Like you said, suicide, I want to bring that up. That's involved in what happened to us. A lot of them just kill themselves. They can't deal with it. And now, you know, when this was going on, we were being put in boarding schools. Our families were being put on reservations. And, you know, when they were being put on reservations, like I said, those other religions, they were coming around. They were coming to the outside people that didn't go to the boarding school. And so it's like, you know, something had to happen to those other families and their children because they're not talking about it. But those of us that went to Catholic boarding school, even a lot of them, they won't talk about it. But those of us that are, and those of us that can find healing however we find it, to know why we were the way we were and the way it is now. And it's like our councils, they don't have the right defenses to defend their people. I mean, it's crazy. It just drives me crazy why it's our leaders are so weak. They don't stand up enough for the people. They don't.
Are you there, Rica?
I'm here.
Okay. And I'd like to welcome Chief Phil. He's joined us. Welcome, Phil.
Good afternoon there. You know, we had a power outage here, and you couldn't reach me by phone, and I couldn't phone out or use my computer. So my apologies. And Hunkashi, I just put a big hug to you there for all that you had to go through and all you've had to endure and so forth. You know, here as well in Canada, of course. Thankfully, we were able, over 21 years it took, to finally at least get some resolution to what happened here. Where literally, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of children, it's documented, were really brutally sexually abused, physically abused, starved. You know, of course, all would have their heads shaven. They'd have needles stuck through their tongue for speaking their own language, or their mouth washed out with a really heavy soap for speaking their own language. They were scalded. They were in one place. They used electric shock on the children. They've also uncovered many graves of children who died at the boarding schools, who never got a chance to return home. You know, they were stuck inside the walls, and they've torn some of these boarding schools. They found little babies stuck into the walls, literally, where they aborted the children who came from being being impregnated by priests and other religious clergy. Because here you had both Catholic and Episcopal boarding schools, as well as some Presbyterian boarding schools as well. And there wasn't much much difference between what happened. In fact, there wasn't a difference between what happened in Episcopal or Catholic schools here or Presbyterian boarding schools. It's like they were written out of the same book, and that is how do you destroy a people. Of course, now if you look at in the U.S., you had large Catholic, government schools like Haskell, Carlisle, Chilocco, Brigham City, Indian School. You had government-run schools, and you also had, of course, as you had there at Marty, Catholic and other religious-run boarding schools, Episcopal boarding schools. But, in terms of abuse, this certainly happened all over the United States. But, the United States government has a provision legally that unless they agree to it, you can't sue them, because after we started, this has been resolved not resolved completely, but there was a big settlement here, $3.5 billion went to the survivors. In fact, every single person who went to a boarding school was compensated just right off the top of the deal, right off the top of the settlement, and that, of course, took a lot of fighting for years. We had to fight. At first they were going to, I call it kind of a meat chart. They were going to use a regular courtroom where you have adversarial lawyers. They were going to literally, if you'd been sexually abused, you would have to describe each time you were sexually abused, how you were sexually abused, how many times you were sexually abused, and based on, if you were sodomized one time, or if you were sodomized 10 times, then how many times you were sodomized, will you give a little more money for each time you were sodomized, or each time you were raped, or the nature of the rape. And so, they had turned this into something that was so horrendous for the victim. That it just, and they were ready to accept this. I remember real clearly at this national meeting. But we were able to turn that around and address it. And we had one of the attorneys that we worked really close with come down. This was in the late 80s. Come down and try every way they could to find a way to, particularly because of Marty, I have to say, because Marty is something I've heard about for a while.
The school that Rica went to.
Yes. Yeah.
Huh?
The school that Rica went to.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and my Hunkashi went there, and many other. But I first really heard about that from a Tahashi who was sexually abused by the priest. Really sexually abused the boys there. The problem what happened
you don't
in these
believe
schools.
it?
Oh yeah.
People don't believe that happened. They're like, how did that don't happen? These are good people.
Oh no, it's. That doesn't mean that every single priest and every single nun, but don't worry, the nuns in every one of these schools in here in Canada, unless they were completely different. But I found the same behavior in the church-run schools. The same behaviors occurred, unless there were very, very strict oversight. Although there was a lot of instances at St. Elizabeth's on the Standing Rock at Wakpala, we looked at that very carefully, and although it was very kind of strict, we found no abuse going on there like other schools, but it was a smaller school. It was run by Dakota people themselves, and but I have to say, at most every school, this happened, and I know this happened to my Tahashi. I know it happened to other males there, and was just plain sexually abused directly by the priests. And by the way, nuns also sexually abused boys and girls. This idea that these things didn't happen is just simply a denial. People are in denial about that.
Yeah, they don't believe it because it's so horrible. I mean, it's horrible to tell someone, especially if you're a man, to tell someone that happened to you. I'm like, wow. I give these men that can stand up and say what happened to them like that in front of people, I just want to hug them, and I just want to say, oh, thank you. It makes me it makes me a better person knowing that they're able to tell what happened to them and then deal with the problem and get to be a better person with a better life.
And
I was just going to mention that yes, it's just brother Phil.
I just wanted to let you know, brother Phil. I just wanted to let you know, in case you didn't hear, I read the beginning of your sexual abuse speech up to the part about why spiritual leaders have always taught us. You can believe in the Creator and will not be tested, for when the cry of truth is raised, so is the cry of denial. So I pretty much read your speech up to that point.
Yes.
So listeners are
it was my own sexual abuse that I had to. You have to address this, because if you don't, if you can feel it, my dad used to tell me, son, if you can feel it, you can heal it. If you can talk about it, you can understand it. And this sexual abuse that happened to me when I was just 13 years old, this had a big impact on my life. I think I was 12 or 13. This had a big impact on me. And, thankfully later, about 4 years after that, I was able to confront the person who abused me. It's somebody I knew that I'd grown up with. I mean, he'd been an older boy around me in my life. And that's the big problem in a school that was right where I taught at a university in southern Alberta. It was amazing, because what happens is that when the boys were sexually abused, and this happened to be this coach that was there, the head of the athletic school, they even named the gym after the guy. They even named the gym after the one that was sexually abusing the boys, because you see, what would happen is you're so ashamed of this abuse, and then these pedophiles, they're really gifted at getting this thing hidden. And so what they did was they would sexually abuse other boys, younger boys, and then they get the other boys. I mean, first of all, the priests or the nuns or whatever would encourage, in a way, the children they abused to abuse other children. And so what you had was this conspiracy of silence, and then the ones that were kind of the bigger bullies who would sexually abuse the other boys, then they became very powerful figures on the tribal council. Even some of them became chiefs there. And here in Canada, the chairperson is called a chief. And they then would hire the ones they abused to keep this quiet. And it was really quite a mess. And it's what happened. And so what happens is, on our reservations and reserves in Canada and the United States, and it's something still we're having to deal with, because what happens is that you have abusers who kind of keep this conspiracy of silence, or you have one of your relatives who was abused, and then they end up abusing and maybe abusing family members. And then, people are in denial. They want to cover up for the abuser because it's so shameful. And so the cycle continues. It goes on. Now, I don't know, Hunkashi, if that's true down there at home or not still. But, back behind the scenes, there's a lot of this stuff still being covered up, still not being exposed. Because relatives, that's my relative, so I can't say anything against my relative, or my relative, it's better to keep the can of worms, not open the can of worms. But we got to clean this out, because it's responsible for lots of suicides. We had all kinds of suicides here in Canada as we tried to work through this issue. Because once all people would bring this out, and then the other side of the family would say, no, it's not true, or they didn't know, this person didn't rape you, no, they couldn't do this to the child, and they go back and forth, and then people just would have so much pain, they just kill themselves.
Yeah, that's just a lot of more people that went to their death with a secret that they probably would have never told anybody. And so when that happens with the suicides, people wonder what happened, but usually it's a sexual abuse that happens to them. And alcohol is always involved, always.
Yes, absolutely. And then so many relatives died from alcoholism. That was another thing that happened. I mean, alcoholism, drug abuse, whatever, and then this is intergenerational as well. I mean, the hurt of one is the hurt of all, and the honor of one is the honor of all. That hurt gets passed on generation to generation.
Yeah, absolutely. In my family, it's that way, Sometimes I feel like I shouldn't even say anything because I have some brothers that are in prison for sexual abuse. But in my case, my brother's case, their stories, the family members were the ones that were involved. But as they got older, they recanted their statements, and now my brother is still fighting every day for their lives in prison for something that they didn't do. And it's like with the family, it's kind of kept quiet with each other. But we all know one thing for sure, and that's that their uncles, my brothers, they're saying now that it didn't happen. And so with those girls and boys being as old as they are now and having children of their own, they love their uncles. They're like, that didn't happen, Mom. That didn't happen, Auntie. They were, at that time, alcohol was so bad in my family that we all kind of lost our minds. And all during that time, we love our children, but you can't love them enough because alcohol is more important. But,
right.
I mean, I have to say it. I have to say what happened to me because otherwise I probably would have been dead and I wouldn't be able to live with myself. I wouldn't love my family the way I do now because I know now what happened to me. So in my case, I'm a better grandmother and a better mother for it after I was able to set it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that only abuse people, only hurt people. And this is why at Alkali Lake, which kind of led the sobriety movement up here in Canada, they had a lot of that happen underneath the surface. But, they set up processes up here where communities are held. I mean, a relative just doesn't go out and sexually abuse a niece or a nephew or rape somebody or whatever. I mean, you're going to find, I would say, in practically any case of this, where the person doing this has been abused as a child already. And it just sets up a pattern. So this is where the bringing back of the hoop healing the hoop of the Seven Council of Fires, or healing the hoop of any of our First Nations or tribes or nations, is going to take so much forgiveness, because we have to realize this, for a lot of the young people, this happened as children. I mean, when they were encouraged to sexually abuse other children, or they sexually abused or abused other children, they were children. And then later, of course, that behavior continued as adults. But this is where we have to know that when this happens, these relatives just don't do it out of the clear blue sky. I mean, it just doesn't. It is the most shameful thing. In talking to, in knowing now a lot of the abusers who have now stepped out and have accepted their abuse and their abusing, and they've become tremendous healers. And they've been able to come out in their communities and be reaccepted and come back again and be a good relative.
Yeah.
And that's tough, though.
Yes, it's good to be a leader. It's good to be a leader, but if you were the abuser and you don't have no conscience and no shame, then you don't need to be a leader.
Come on. Go outside.
That's right. You got to face it.
Yeah,
That's
you got to
right. You're
face
very
it.
right. Gosh.
Eagle, are you still with us? Eagle, are you still with us? Okay. I want to, for a moment, put this in perspective of, again, the purposeful destruction of indigenous sovereignty. And I'm going to read something brief from The Great Matriarch by Meredith Quinn that will give listeners an idea of how purposeful the destruction and perversion of Lakota, Dakota, and all tribal people has been. And it may sound odd, but this is from Meredith Quinn's The Great Matriarch, page 9. An occult science and religion does a perpetual prayer called the Prayer of Atlantis every day at a given time, so the Time Walker Society will never again reawaken on Indian reservations. Another white worldwide religious organization performs a song called the Song of St. John the Divine, or Pandora's Jar of Plagues, every full moon, so the dance and songs of creation would never be performed by Indian tribes. Why, Eagle, is the traditional religion so threatening to these people who forced this religion and brought all of this abuse to the Americas? What's going on here in the larger picture, if you don't mind?
Well, simply put, there is power in spiritual practices, ceremonies done at the correct times, appointed times, and things like that. But it's not. It may sound strange, I guess. It's not hocus pocus. If you do the right things at the right times, you can command things to happen. Controlling the forces of nature, for example. The grandmothers had the powers to control the forces of nature to keep the peace. Example, in the European white man's, they talk of witches, and witches cast spells, and you see how they cast spells to bring up the seas, sink ships, different kinds of things. While what they're showing you there is the clan mothers, we're talking about clan mothers, with the abilities to control the forces of nature. The reason that they do that is because until they ran into the North American Indian, they'd never been defeated with their own spiritual practices against other peoples. So once they ran into your spiritual practices and they couldn't defeat you with theirs, true original religion of the Great Spirit and the matriarchal system of government has power, literally. Why they came to it, because if you're not believing in your original religion, then you're no longer one of the original Indians. You don't have that sovereignty, you don't have that power.
Yes, that's one of the reasons why creating this grandmother circle it's good, because, like I said before, our leaders, they don't have that. I don't know what it is. It's like they don't have a strong defense to go against, say, the state or the federal government, because the federal government's always sending lies on down saying, oh, your funding this year is not going to be as much as it was last year. And the leaders go, oh, okay, well, great. They don't have, there's no defense. They don't say, well, this is how it has to be because our families are getting bigger, our tribe is getting bigger, and we can't have a smaller amount of money coming in. We have to have more. But they don't say that. They're like, okay, all right. And in any case, our defense from our tribal government here is not strong enough. And so, with the grandmothers that, in my case, that have been physically and sexually abused, they're the strong ones. They're the one that want to get rid of the meth. They're the one that want to get rid of the alcohol, the sexual abuse, all of that.
Yes.
Well, I think as well. Yeah, I think as well. We have to really recognize this was not some accident that happened. This was a very, very key part of federal policy. The destruction of the traditional kinship system was a very, very clear policy. Calculated. It was not something that just happened. I mean, in Canada, they had the head of the I guess there they call it. They have different names, but the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or the Department of Indian Affairs. He made a statement. This was in the early 1920s. He said, "Did I say the Indian problem? There will be no Indian problem in 2 decades, because there will be no more Indians." This was the purpose, to completely destroy the kinship system and any kind of traditional leadership, so that they could take the land and could, quote-unquote, civilize the children. So this was not any accident. And that's why the government of Canada had to take the responsibility they did ultimately, when thousands and thousands and thousands of cases came up finally, and class action suits and so forth. They had to take responsibility, because it was clear. This was a clear pattern. And by the way, everything that Canada learned about how they were able to colonize Indigenous people, Aboriginal people, Native Americans, however you want to call it, in Canada came directly from watching how the U.S. did it. So, for instance, the U.S. had big, heavy, large schools like Haskell Institute, where both my mother and father went. They had Carlisle, Shamawa, other big schools. And so what they did there, in large reservations, where they thought by putting 2 or 3 different tribes, or 1 or 2 different tribes together, they would fight each other, or they'd already create this fighting among each other. Because disunity, they know if they could somehow disunify Indigenous people or tribes or nations, First Nations, they could take them down. And so in Canada, what they did was they realized, oh, this is not a good deal to have big reservations. So they broke them up into much smaller communities, where the different religious groups could keep the people oppressed more. But it was very conscious. This was not a. And then the other thing is, they covered it up. There was cover-ups. I mean, very conscious cover-ups. And I think if they ever completely, are able, let's say at Marty, if they really got down to it and were able to get the whole story and whole picture, you'd find where people did try to stand up and say something, but they were shut up. They covered it up. Again, I mean, that's something people have to know who went to school there. I can't say that, but I can tell you from the patterns of so many schools. I worked with thousands of survivors during this time, and went out to many different places across Canada. And the pattern was like amazing. It was like it was written out of the same book, whether they were Episcopal or Catholic schools.
That's how I feel. I mean,
so are these residential schools, are any of them still going on?
No, I think they closed the last few years ago.
I think the Shamawa. Yeah, Shamawa in Salem, Oregon, is still in operation. And the reason why is, by the way, the tribes there operate these schools, is you have these intergenerational situations where you have young people whose parents and grandparents were sexually abused or physically abused, or most certainly psychologically, emotionally abused. There's a thing I sent to you called a section called "What if the Holocaust Never Stopped?" I hope you put up that website there, sister, because it literally lays out all the different kinds of things that were done to children, physically, psychologically, as children as a whole. And this happened, and it'll eventually, and hopefully, people like Hunkashi will stand up and bring this out, because that's why she's such a powerful force of healing, is because she's been able to address this within her own self, rather than. And I just have wondered to myself, how many relatives who are dead and buried from alcoholism or suicide, if we went back and really were able, and we will in the next world, in the other side camp, we'll get a chance to visit about this, but in this world, like Hunkashi said, behind that person dying and that person relative walking along the road so in such a pitiful manner, in such a sad manner, that just didn't happen. That just didn't come out of the sky. Each of us are born sacred beings. And so unless that sacredness and that beauty of who we are when we're born, unless something happens to that, it's not healed, it's not natural for somebody to kill themselves. They have to be in incredible pain, or to sexually abuse others, or to just die at 40 years old. My cousin Sonny, in fact, a lot of my relatives are dead today from alcoholism. He was 35 years old. By then, a chronic alcoholic. Died in the toilet when he had a hemorrhage in his brain. I mean, some things happened in there. But at the time, it was all shut up.
Well, that's why I say people that were abused, they need to stand up. And it hurts. Yes, it hurts. But when it comes out, when you finally get to say what happened to you, you feel so good. And then you get involved in your religions, your beliefs even more. And so then you love yourself more, and you love your family more. It's that simple. For me, it is. It wasn't, but it is now that way. But the guys that you see still that were at a Catholic boarding school and they're still alcoholics, they're still drug addicts, you want to talk to them and you want to help them, but you can't. I don't know. it's hard to help them.
Yep. Until they themselves come to that place, and it comes from really talking about it just like we are now. I remember when we first made this film. We made a film in 1978 called "Healing the Hurts," and this was really set off the whole residential school issue here in Canada. And we'd done another one called, in 1985, we made a film called "The Honor of All: The Story of Alkali Lake," which showed we began the movement towards ending alcoholism. But we kept encountering, wherever we go, we'd get into the alcohol abuse, and underneath it, we'd find this residential school issue. So we finally had a workshop, and it so happened that the person, Phil Lucas, who made the story, The Honor of All: The Story of Alkali Lake, Phyllis Chelsea called us from Alkali Lake and said, let's make a film of this. And I said, well, we only have 2 weeks before we're going to have this workshop with people who attended boarding schools in the United States and Canada. But, the Alaskan Native Health Board came through with $25,000. We were able to pull a crew together, and we filmed it. And by the way, I made that available without cost on internet. It's called "Healing the Hurts," and it gives you a first-hand look at when we first took the wound, pulled we might say opened this wound. And there was a lot of people who just were infuriated because they had issues about this. I mean, they had been caught up in sexually abusing others, or they'd been sexually abused, and they said, they really attacked us. I mean, we were really attacked by people who later were the first ones there to receive the money when the money came through 21 years later. But at the time, they really, really did not approve of this. And why in the world, why are you opening this can of worms up? Why are you talking about this? This is dead. It's gone. But it's not dead and gone. It's still being played out every day. Now it's into our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It's not over until we clean it up.
No, you're absolutely right when you said that. That's what it's about.
Yes, it is. I'd like to just say on it, like you were saying about how, like, it's calculated. We touched on that, I think, right at the very beginning, like the reason why of the taking the religion sort of thing, and that is because of the residential school system was to break the clan system. Like you said, the kinship system, that was the clan. Like literally the clan system of living. And I was trying to remember which one of those early prime ministers of Canada made that comment right about this, like to take the savage out of the Indian sort of thing, whatever, civilizing them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was exactly that. Also, Rica, regards to the tribal government, as you're talking about, you got to understand that that's not actually a tribal government. That's basically it's the what do you call it, the management board, if you like, of the corporation, the chief executive officer, the chief.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, but I'm, still in their capacity, they're not going to say or do nothing about it because I'm sure it probably happened to them. So it's a good thing that they don't say anything, I guess, and they probably don't want to bring it out because, like I said, it's really hard. It's really hard to let it go. You want to live with alcoholism and drug addiction all your life, then so be it. I mean,
it's real. But what they're talking about was the grandmother. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make this other thing because we have a lot of our relatives who are what I would call truly are way more Christian than any of the Christians that ever came here. I cannot dignify in any way, shape, or form what happened calling it Christianity. This was churchianity. It had nothing to do with turn the other cheek. It had nothing to do with kindness and forgiveness and so forth. This had to do with people who were incredibly ushika. I mean, we're talking about people who are incredibly spiritually ill. incredibly spiritually ill people did these acts. I mean, and you have to be incredibly spiritually ill. I mean, really ill to sexually abuse children and do the things they did to the children physically, emotionally, mentally, stripping them of, trying to strip them of, make them ashamed of their language, making them ashamed of the way they prayed, making them ashamed. This is not anything to do with being kind, turning the other cheek, being forgiving, treating your neighbor as yourself, and so forth. This had nothing to do with it. The reason I'm going to say that is because I know I have a lot of relatives who because they tried to destroy all the cultural dimensions. Sometimes during that period of time, the only place they had to come together to speak the language or to just come together and be together was inside a church. And if they would have known this was happening to their grandchildren, I'll tell you what, you would have had hell to pay. I mean, even if they knew they were being physically abused, you would have had grandmothers out there. In fact, the case of the Standing Rock, where they had this DNS Baker. I'll tell you what, Miss Bloody Knife, her name Bloody Knife, she had slapped her granddaughter, and when she found out, she came up there and she chased that doggone Deaconess Baker with her hunting knife. She was going to kill her. So you got to know that the way they did this is, had the elders known this was going on, but they buried it. They kept it. They had ways that you can read about how pedophiles are. They're very, very, very sick people. I just need to put that in there so that we can differentiate what people. I mean, I don't see. I don't. When you treat other people like this, when you support war and support blowing people up all over the world, it has nothing to do with this Christian idea. What the kindness is supposed to be about Christianity. Now, people call themselves that. I can't dignify them by calling them that. I call them churchianity, or somebody who's a complete hypocrite of their own faith.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why I always distinguish, as somebody who was born Hebrew, and, characterize myself as a scene, because the early people around that teacher, Yeshua, lived in community, kept the moon calendar, and were all wiped out in the first 200 years, So, the usage of Christianity in world domination is not the teachings of that teacher at all. But back to, Meredith Quinn used to say, you can't go to church on Sunday and be an Indian on Monday. And that's something still. There's so many people in the community who are trying to do both. And we keep pointing out that that's really detrimental to sovereignty for the nation, besides for their own personal well-being.
Well, yes, that wasn't Meredith saying that. That was actually came from a judge to 65 Sioux Indians that were trying to claim sovereignty. And I think that's what he told me. You can't go to church on Sunday and be an Indian on Monday. And it's a legal truth. See, what he's getting at there is the reason why behind the converting Indians. Because one, then, okay, if you're converting them from something. What are you converting them from? Your original religion, spiritual practices and culture, the matriarchal system of government, clan mothers. And once you accept and call yourself, for instance, a Christian or a Roman Catholic, well, then you are no longer the original kind of Indian.
Right. I get it.
Right. Because this is the thing, you see. A lot of people get confused about this word, religion. Religion, technically, as a term, means law. Whatever your religion is, that is your law. Which is why they wanted to convert you from your original, because your original is the supreme law of the land. It's the first law of the land. The system that was put here by the Creator, Creator Great Spirit. That's why it's the supreme law of the land.
Sure, I get it now.
Right. So that's, if you look amongst nature, all the animal kingdoms, that's what you'll find, matriarchal systems. Queen bee, queen ant, horses, elephants,
Yes.
deer, moose, elk, bear, even wolves, alpha female runs the pack. And that's why the word savage, why the Indians used to be called savages. See, most people think that it's a derogatory term, when actually it's not. It's the correct legal term for a sovereign Indian. Because savage comes from the word silvictus. Silvictus means those who live amongst the trees.
Yeah, and you know, lately, a lot of our people are calling themselves that now, savage, instead of...
Yes, well, the understanding of what it means is starting to get out there, right?
Yes.
Because this is the thing, we're talking right now in the English language, right?
Yes.
But when people communicate in this language on the street, and how they understand words and what they mean, and what you might think is the same word in a courtroom setting, or on a contract setting, because that's what you're doing, is contracting in court anyway. You're not talking words, you're talking terms. And terms is the exact, how it's defined legally, exactly, and it means only that. So what I'm getting at is words and terms. Some words can mean many different things, right? They can be expanded or contracted. Terms can't. That's why if you look at any legislation, it'll say these terms. It's telling you these are special meanings then to whatever the words that follow.
Sure.
The legal meaning of the term.
Now I understand what you're saying, that right there. But in the case that you said, the judge said, don't be an Indian on Monday because you went to church on Sunday or whatever. That's like kill the Indian but save the man, right?
Yeah, kind of. But what he was saying is because these Indians were trying to claim that they were sovereign Indians. And what he pointed out to them is, well, you can't be sovereign Indians because you can't go to church on Sunday and be an Indian, sovereign Indian on Monday.
Yeah.
Your religion is your law. If you're claiming sovereign, well, that would be your religion. If you're claiming sovereignty.
I just have a question from someone here. Could you give a definition of sovereignty?
Yes, exactly the same way Meredith does on the video. Sovereignty is clan mothers with a headsman chief to speak on her behalf and members of her clan. Clans make up a tribe, and a tribe is a sovereign nation. If you look in Webster's 1828, look up the word tribe. Number 5, a tribe is a nation of savages, it says. And this is the thing, you see, under international law, there are only 3 classes of physical beings: savages, persons, or inhabitants. That's the person. My little girl said, or humans, which is the person. Because a human being, if you call yourself a human being, right, then you're saying that you're a monster. So, as I'm saying, the deception of the white man is the semantics. It's the meanings of the words, the true meanings, their legal meanings. Like even the saying, a human being, most people are conditioned to call themselves a human being. If you look it up, Ballantyne's Law Dictionary, 3rd edition, human, C, as in look at, S-E-E, monster. So 3 classes of physical beings: savages, persons, or inhabitants. Okay, as person, and that's your average Joe on the street who doesn't know who he is. You have a sub-classification of the person called the private person, which is your royalty in the civilized rule of law. savage person, private person, and that's the royalty, the kings and queens of Europe, the different European countries, who are all Romans, if you follow their bloodlines, and then your inhabitant. So your inhabitant is a third world citizen, which is what a prisoner of war Indian on the reservation is, on the prisoner of war camp. Because that is how you're technically classified right now if you're a treaty Indian. On the tribal enrollment list of one of those autonomous corporations.
Yeah.
So, as a signatory, though, that's a sovereign Indian. A signatory, what was known as a savage. You have clan mothers, the head clan mother, who has a chief to speak on her behalf. This is the difference between the chiefs you have now, like of those. They're through the democratic system, like the mob rule kind of thing, majority vote, as opposed to where a head clan mother chooses who's going to, fill the role to speak on her behalf kind of thing, right? Take care of the people. All of this was explained in that movie, Avatar. That whole movie, entirely from the very beginning to the very end, is all about international law. It's all about Indians. It's all about tribal custom and usage. And if you look and remember, they called them savages at the beginning of the movie. Savage, Silvictus, those who live amongst the trees. Okay, so savages, where were those guys living? Oh, yeah. What kind of system were they? What was that? Those group that you ran to, it was a clan. And there was a chief. And the chief's main concern, he was always on the welfare of the people, right? That was his thinking, everything. But was he the boss? No. His wife, the head clan mother, was the boss, wasn't she? See, I'm explaining what I'm telling you is you can't ever say to the white man, you didn't tell us this, because they show it to you through the movies every day. And they've openly told you that they'll communicate with you through the medium of theatre, movie theatres, for instance, as well as news and things like that. And also about the committing suicide and things like that. In the Dakota Proclamation, right near the back of the book, he explains about that they're very sophisticated in their psychological abilities, like to mind control and stuff. People, he says they literally have. This is a little what they do on the Indian schools. There's 4 teams: Team A, B, C, and D. And the first one assesses the child, and the next one where they're going to kind of work they're going to do and where they're going to live. Right through to the 4th one was like the termination squad, where they could make children commit suicide if they didn't get them sort of conform to what they want them to do. Seriously, guys, there's so much more going on. Meredith, he was a truly gifted old savage, very knowledgeable in many different areas. Primarily because he had teachings from his grandmother, who literally was the last head clan mother of the Dakota Indians. She lived on the Sister-in-Waterton Reservation in a big house and had sort of money and could command the white man to do things, and the Americans did it. Whereas the rest of the Indians on the reservation were living poor and penniless kind of thing, just like they do today. What was the difference? Well, his grandmother was a signatory Indian. She literally was a sovereign Indian. Whereas the rest of the Indians is can't go to church on Sunday and be an Indian on Monday, even though they're Indians. You're not Indians if you're a prisoner of war. Legally speaking, a sovereign Indian. What's to think about?
We have we have a guest in the show. His name is Gene. Gene, say hi. And also, we have a caller on the line. So I'm going to let that in and see if they have a question or comment. Hello.
Hey. Hello? Goodbye.
Caller, you are on the air with us.
Can't hear somebody.
Hello?
Lisa? Hello?
Hello. You're on the air with us. You have a question or comment? Hello? No? Okay. Well, then I will use the caller. We're fine. I'm sorry, Eagle. Go ahead and Lisa. We have 2 choices here, Eagle and Rita. We have about half an hour left. and we can continue talking, or and I also have 23 minutes of a conversation that I had with Professor Victor Douville a few days ago. Would you all like to hear that, or shall we continue?
No, I like to hear it.
Okay,
Yes.
well, hopefully it'll be audible. It may be audible, when we all go listen to the recording. But I'm going to start saying that this is Professor Victor Douville with the first 23 minutes of conversation we had a few days ago.
Interested in the system that we have. We have a system called CUXA, which is a group that at one time intermarried. They were in alliance with the Ojibwe. And they intermarried with them. And they adopted this cross-cousin marriage. So one band, the mother band, which was the Isaya Tiriko, that group intermarried. So they, because they violated the system that we had, was the northern groups that had the cross-cousin marriage, because of the peoples up there. So it was a conflict between the group itself, but the parent band is the one that married into that. And eventually they were called Kiuksa, which means marriage breakers of the... and eventually our tribe divided along those lines. The one that wanted and one that didn't want it. There was kind of a social civil war within. And eventually, that's what caused our groups to migrate out of Minnesota, because they get away from that. But in the clan system, it's a little bit different, because you can't marry anybody in the same clan, same sign. Usually, in the practicing of recognizing kin, usually the cross cousins move away, which leaves a parallel, because we had no such thing as parallel cousins, parallel relationship, because they were integrated as family. So, but the original was a matrifocal system where, much like Iroquois, we traced our lineage from the mother's side. And but that started breaking up. That there's something about where you live, or it's going to bring the division among the Patrifocal and Matrifocal. So in the women's area where they lived, they didn't really have to labor a lot to farm, because nature reinforced all that. It helped. But once you got out of that area, then it shifted to male. So all throughout our learning about our solar systems, we began to realize that it changes throughout time. And trying to give you a good idea to study that.
And there's one I don't have that I wanted to get you, and it was too big. It's called the Dakota Proclamation.
Oh yeah. I've been doing I've been working with the Wolf Child, and he gave me the copy of that the doctrine. So I've been integrating in my classroom systems. We're trying to seek a way of breaking off from the old Anglo-Saxon laws.
Yes.
And trying to go back to traditional. So I got that, and we did a number of which the doctrine of discovery. That's the one we've been showing. It's online too. You get that online, but it there it defines all the legal terms of Anglo-Saxon, and the churches want to promote that, and now we have separation of church and state. So we're trying to seek means of doing that and using our traditional government, because the government we have is the IRA government, which is not the right kind. And,
you're not giving this to me, are you?
No. I'm trying to get another copy. Don't get that online.
Okay.
If you get that, it's Wolfchild, Sheldon Wolfchild, and you get that Doctrine of Discovery. That's on there. If you contact them, you send you a free copy.
Okay. Because in order to claim sovereignty, you have to have the right form, or they won't recognize it.
Yeah, that is. We've been struggling to get that traditional government in there, and because we all adapted to the IRA government, we still have treaty groups up that didn't sign into that.
And I understand there's a difference between treaties and treatises.
Yeah.
You know about that?
Yeah.
And the treaties, if the clan mothers weren't behind them, then the treaties aren't really treaties, and they can break them.
Yeah.
They're simply treatises.
But right now we got a GNO status, that have that we got one sitting that we have a desk over in Geneva, and we have our traditional government based there, and so we're trying to draw strength from that.
So I was right to reach out to you. You were the right person.
Yeah. So we're really interested in. I used to belong to the treaty council, but it's a puppet. It's a puppet dictated by tribal council. And, that's why I got off the treaty at the council. I'm trying to. We're trying to establish one where we go back to the lineal descendants that signed the treaties. And my grandfather, Shooty Cat, is one that signed some of the treaties. So we're trying. He was saying all the relatives in there to go back to the legitimacy of who the signers were.
And do you know who the clan mothers were?
Yeah.
You do?
Right there. That was the they call her medicine woman. She was the wife of Shooty Cat.
Oh my goodness.
And she kept a perfect household, and within her, she really groomed the boys in her to lead.
So you know that the word savage actually means those who live amongst the trees, and is a compliment.
Yeah. So that is our lifelong dream, is to go back to a traditional government if we get everybody on the same page. But we have all battlefields out there because of self-interest groups. A lot of our people are being acculturated, so they now don't really think treaties are the right way, right path. But we're trying to.
Is it true that in 408 AD that when the Visigoths were defeated, that that North and South America, the Americas Empire, that the chief clan mother for the Americas was Dakota, and that they were there and signed that treaty? That is true.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate strength, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then that in 1491, the British gave their land title back to the Romans, and then in 1492, and that's what gave rise to Columbus being ciphered as a pirate, and all that is true.
Yeah. So we're attempting to open that. But we've done a lot of groundwork because I teach a lot of tribal government stuff. We're trying to go back and open that path so people have understanding of where we came from.
Are you willing to speak on the air about this? I do this. I think I told you I've been doing this radio program since August called Standing with Standing Rock, Savage Sovereignty. And you will?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I could probably get involved in that, as I'm already trying to expand out and push that movement to get that to be accepted. And if we get enough in there, we're trying to get the Pope to try to reverse those papal bulls that came out. And
then all the land returns to...
And then it would be on equal legal field with the United States. That's what they're trying to do. The man looks like the right person to go, but we still, it's going to be hard looking. But that's the ultimate goal, is to, because we ran out of options, the courts, because Doctor Sent for A and B on the Black Hills is shut down now. It only goes one way. And so our dream is to open up that if we could get the Pope to renounce those doctrines, we'll be able to get that on the same footing internationally.
Yes.
The international people that are already sided with us. It's just that they don't have power to push.
Well, I understand that all the wealth of the Vatican actually is owed to the tribes. Yeah. Is that your understanding too?
Yeah. So the income and the system that imposed on tribes in Southwest extended out to northern tribes. So we were nothing but a stepping stone.
Well, I understand first they murdered all the European tribes to wipe out the records before they came over here.
But that's really, we try to seek a understanding of how we can go. The problem here on the Rosebud, most of the reservations, is that we have incomplete nuclear families that are really high, roughly about 40 to 50%. If we can get the families to function, get it back on the same page, and we'll go back to a matrilineal system, matrilocal. But it's kind of hard at this stage because it's broken families.
Can it be done spiritually to replace, since you can't trace necessarily? Can it be done through ceremony?
The important ingredient is get spirituality back in. That's why we're so willing to go out and promote that star knowledge, which we are able to show that landforms are God-given, that we communicate with the above below, with the sacred above and sacred below.
Everything they're trying to do with their technologies done spiritually, naturally.
Yeah. So that's one of our main goals.
And I'm here at your service, but this is why I'm here. Is for this work.
That's one of the biggest problems that we're trying to get them to honor treaty with regard to health. Because the Rosebud health system has fallen apart. It's stripped of all the funding and in-house fighting, and so we have to. Rosebud has a large referral service. They got a multi-million-dollar complex, yet they cannot do operations. They don't have the doctors to fill those positions, and so they have to refer them to Sioux Falls, the Sanford system, and Rapid City. So we have to travel there with the doctors. So we cannot go on our own to see doctors. We have that referral system within the health. But that's one of the treaty requirements that they reneged on. So we have a lot of issues out there trying to get them to obligate the treaty systems, and people like Trump, they're taking all that power away. They're budgeting, the funding, and so we're at a point where we have to go back to something to reform the government, maybe go back to natural fabric, and then get them to honor treaties, because...
So have you chosen your clan mother yet?
We haven't yet, because I'm trying to get... well, one thing we did, though, I brought all in my grandchildren. I have a large house. I brought in all my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. I'm raising all of them, because they're one side of their, like my son-in-law and daughter-in-law, they all died. The other ones, they couldn't find jobs, so I got them all in. I got 19 living in the house.
Oh.
So that's the beginning of that. The traditional way that...
longhouse.
We got these clan homes with maybe 4 or 5 families in there. So I'm trying to raise them the best I can. Indeed, I'm not getting any help.
My mission, I mean, and I don't know if I told you why I'm so audacious to... My youngest daughter was born in a barn in the Star in Wisconsin, near where Miracle had been born. We were sent from a community we were living in Arizona, and Creator said, go do this. I didn't have any idea what or why. So on the White Buffalo Nation is our organization. I'm here. I think I gave you a card as a Free Nations ambassador and UN observer. So people will support. And, you know, I mean, they've been sending money for me so I can drive around and stuff. But we can, because that's what we're here to support, what you're doing. And we'll ask. What I like to do is tell people where their donation will go. You know what I'm saying? So, because I don't want to be raising help and then have somebody go off gambling. You know what I mean? It's like, no, it has to go for the, you know, reestablishment of the nation. But expenses for the household, those are all legitimate. So, I'm so relieved, Victor.
I spent a lifetime working on it since 1970. My wife works at her and I, we curate we're on our Social Security. So that's how we can afford to raise our own grandchildren, and we're not getting any help. And I don't want help because we want to do it together. But it's we have to get our system here, we get the family system functioning. One of the things that in tribal we found that if you're ground-based, which is the clan mothers, in the clan system, if they lay a good foundation, that's where the tribal government, the template of the tribal government runs on that.
And it holds internationally. It will stop the black snake. It will stop Trump.
And that's what we're trying to rebuild, reform the families. It's hard because even the tribal council don't want that agenda. They want to control.
They want to keep getting the money.
They want to control and get the money. They don't want a functional government, family system, because they will dictate. So they turned their backs when we asked for tribal reform, social reform. But we're gradually we had the government reformed. And the most part, there's kind of a miracle that came because our government was based on a district system. We want to go back to the old Jewish-by or community government. We had 21 traditional communities there, and that was taken apart into districts. Finally, we had a government reform that people stood past. They wanted all the communities to be equal. So we got some of the larger communities, like one of the communities that here at Antelope, it usually has 3,000 people, as opposed to another one in Woods, South Dakota, which only has 6 families. So it's less than 500. So the tribal council usually picks representative, so they overload the representative more than the small ones. So now we're on the same page where we have got all the communities equal power. So that's a miracle that was done, and they laid the groundwork for it. Now we can go to reform a lot better. But all the years I've been teaching here, seem to kind of reinvent the wheel. You take 2 steps forward and 3 steps backwards. It's because the tribal government, it follows to the wishes of the government. We have to get off paternalism. It's hard.
So we need to bring more sustainable businesses here.
That is what needs to be done. We need to begin to have a sustainable economy, which our original chiefs wanted. When they came here, they looked at this place and said the only way we can run a sustainable type of system is to have to convert kind of ranching style. We have buffalo would be able to run them, horses rather than farm. But that never happened if you actually go farm, because I'll show you how. So original chiefs were right. We go back to a sustainable economy. And my uncle, one of his sons that started the University of Stanley Redford, he was all for the sustainable economy. He was able to get housing. And then he got into a project where he got rabbits. He was in other wild fowls, like the turkey. the rabbits he saw were abundant, so we could use them. We can take fur from them, make clothing. And there would be a sustainable way of doing things.
I like hemp too.
Yeah, and then he had a turkey ranch where they grew him in wild and that goes so we can hunt him. Now he's looking for maybe deer or buffalo that we can. The university got 500 buffalo and the tribe got about that much, so we're trying to build a herd. We need more land, which land's being diminished. It's a goal. When we look down the line, it's a whole lot of tasks that we before us. And my lifetime's running short. And I've got I'm grooming other people to take over. As I retire back to our family, rebuild that family system. But we got some people, the way I do things out there, I want to get them all involved too. And it's hard because they're all unemployed. They live on that fixed income. If we're able to get the family run back on its feet, we'll be able to go back to the old church system. Where we all share things and it's usually I bought 4 cars, gave them to my kids. They use them. And they run errands for us, and so we share a lot of things. Nothing's really mine. My car, I got the kids take it whenever they have to go get grocery stuff. So everything is shared in the house, so everything. If you put something down, you better watch it.
Right.
We share everything within that. All 19 of us in that family. All a lot of them are unemployed, but they do things for me. I go and leave my car there with you. Flat, they do it. They fix it. The things they can do. But again, it's hard because life is pretty rough here. Unemployment is high. But still, I'm not really looking for monetary. I'm looking for more of a sharing type of economy. I've always found that when I first came or married, before I got married, I lived singly. And when I didn't have a job, we got annuities or commodities. And I found that you cannot make it alone unless you hook up and make a share of things. It goes a long ways if maybe you have 4 people put in a pot, what you get commodities. And when we eventually got married, had a larger family, then that came easy. We were able to do a lot of things in that area. But that is one of the economies that we're trying to push. But again, it's difficult because we're locked into the welfare system.
Yes.
It's bad because the welfare here controls all the homes. So my furnace broke down. I couldn't get one. So I went to the housing, they wouldn't give me any. So I told them I can buy one from you guys. I said, I can make up 2,000 maybe in several months and you can help me get one. But he said, no, we cannot take your money because this is a poverty club. If we get the money, we lose our poverty status. That's the type of mentality they have. So I have to go back and deal with the lights and downtime to get that last thing I wanted because they'll make the money off of it. But I learned to do furnace work too, so I get able to get that. So I ran this whole 2 winters without the furnace. Trying to build chimneys and stuff like that. But you got to go back and go back to the basics. That's really what we lack. The technology is only good if you find some sensible use to it. Like this, the flash drives. I no longer buy books. This used to be all free books.
I know, me too.
Yeah, and I got most of my stuff on.
And that was the beginning of an hour-and-a-half conversation that I had up in Rosebud at the college with Professor Victor Douville, and we'll be listening to more of that in the future. And Rica, you're still with me. I want to thank you for joining us today. We're not going to be on the air next week because it looks like I'm going up to Standing Rock to visit with Joy Braun and Distance Everhart and some other people. That's my birthday present to myself. My birthday is on Monday. But I hope you'll continue to join us, Rica, as we have these weekly programs. And I want to thank Eagle and Chief Phil for joining us. I believe they're not with us at this point. Anything that you'd like to say in closing, Rica?
Oh, I'd like to say thank you, Lisa, for inviting me on your radio station, and I'd like to thank my cousin Phil Lane and your friend Eagle. Thank you. I'd love to be on your show again if I could, but not real soon because I'd like some more people here.
Yes, well, we'll work on that. And like I said, we'll be back not next weekend, but the following Saturday. And I want to thank everyone for listening to the Earth Aid program today and ask everyone to please support our Standing with Standing Rock Savage Sovereignty and Water Protectors mission by visiting GoFundMe.com/slope. And your contributions keep this mission going for the mending of the sacred hoop of life. And I'm particularly also asking for donations so that we can help Brother Gary Rowland replace his water pump because he is having to haul water. And thanks, Rica.
Thank you, Lisa. Hey, you have a happy birthday and enjoy North Dakota. It's beautiful there, I hear.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I want to
thank you for putting Victor on, even if it was recorded. I love that man. He's intelligent. He's brilliant. And I just like to hear his what he has to say. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And a special thanks to our sponsor, Roland and Linda Thomas of BioAge.com/Utopia, whose bio-superfood algae is the answer for our bodies for Fukushima and North American nuclear reactor leakage radiation to eliminate heavy metal toxicity and optimize our health. And we're going to listen to a short piece about that as we come to an end.
Friends, nothing in life is more important than your good health. That's why I recommend bioalgae concentrates, bio-superfood and nutritional supplements. These supplements feed every cell in your body microscopically. No matter how you feel, bioalgae supplements will help you. Many people feel energized shortly after the first time they take it.
And visit bioage.com/Utopia or phone 877-288-9116 for more information and to order. And be sure to mention Utopia for a 15% discount.
Joining us together, let's sustain life on planet Earth. That's yours, mine, and all of ours on and in the land, waters, and air. Thanks for joining us. Till next time, this is Seava, Lisa Wolf for Slope. Save and sustain life on planet Earth. Earth Aid now. Let's give the Earth and all her children freedom from fear, lack, and degradation, and bring a utopian reality now.
Scott Mobile Mini is now